How you doing, everybody? My name is Brooke Blackburn, and you're listening to Talking Blues with Mako and myself hanging out, which was a Bob Marley song also called Talking Blues, which I performed. I performed live a while ago on a Bob Marley tribute. Yeah.
So let's start with Memphis. You just got back from the IBCs.
Yep.
You've been there before,
Yeah.
I believe.
I've been there with the band.
With the band. I think you went. Did you go with Shakira as well?
Yeah, not performing with Shakur, no.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you've been there before. This is the first time you went as a solo performer.
Yeah,
What was that about?
let me correct that. I did perform with Shakura, but we didn't compete with Shakura. Shakura, we did a thing called Her Majesties, which was four vocalists, and we backed them. Yeah. So I was in Memphis just before the pandemic in 2020, January 2020 or February, late January, early February. And we did perform in Memphis, but we didn't compete. I didn't compete then. I just did like a showcase performance.
Okay, but so this time you went as a solo.
A solo
performer.
artist, yeah. From the Grand River Blues Society, they sponsored me to go down, and I went down there and performed as a solo artist. My original music, basically.
I know that I've known you for a while. I'm not sure if you've been doing the solo thing for a long time.
You know,
or
I
is
have,
it something
but not so much that people really notice. I mean, I've done the solo project for a while, because I'm a songwriter. You know, that's my gig. You know, I write a lot of songs. So the songs, because my history playing with different musicians, and I've played probably with more different musicians than any other of my brothers, because I'm a little bit older than most of them, but I'm also a little bit, in the scene, like I'm gigging with different people. This is my full-time income. So when I played with a guy named Eugene Smith back in the 80s, and my other brother, Dwayne, played with Eugene also, and Robert too, my older brother. But when playing with him and playing with a 4-string tenor guitar player it was a songwriter, a singer-songwriter, and doing all his original music really got me into the songwriting phase. I mean, I was songwriting before I was with Eugene, but it was a big, almost like it's like you can do this. You can do this. You can make a career as a singer-songwriter if you so feel. And acoustic, I never even played acoustic guitar before I think I was with Eugene. I never played acoustic guitar ever. I was always an electric guitar player. I didn't even own an acoustic guitar. And it was like I started later on after Eugene, like later on, I'd say probably around 2000. I mean, I played with Eugene probably late 80s, early 90s, even possibly earlier than that. Maybe even like early 80s. But we played a bunch of clubs in Toronto, like PWDs, and a bunch of clubs downtown, and then we played Halifax. We toured a lot with Eugene. So I started playing acoustic guitar later on, and playing acoustic guitar to me is like almost playing like a grand piano. So you get that acoustic feel, and it's really good for songwriting, for me anyways. And I wrote some stuff on electric too, but I find better just I got to hear the sounds of the world around me, and if I don't have to plug anything in, I'm good,
Well, I think it was during the pandemic that I really took notice of the
Yeah.
solo stuff because
Yeah.
you were out there doing stuff.
Yeah,
all the
I
time.
was here. I got a studio at my house, and it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to sit around for 2 years or whatever. Nobody knew the duration at that time, but it was like sit around, do nothing. And I said, no, that's not who I am. So I started recording, and then I started doing some different caption videos with myself and a drummer and a bass player and a guitar, another guitar player and keyboard player, and doing all these things of these songs that I'm writing. I'm just writing I'm sitting at home writing. I wrote 2 full albums, 1 jazz album worth of stuff. I never pressed anything yet, but a full jazz album worth of stuff, a full singer-songwriter album, a half a country album, and a little bit of a reggae album. So it's like all this stuff that I'm writing, and it's like, well, let's do something. And then I saw people doing these videos at home. It's like everybody seems to be set up with some type of setup at home. So I started reaching out to my friend Paige, my friend Roger, Mark Kelso, Ben Riley, Howard A, all these different people. And it's like I said, well, let's do these videos at home. I'm writing these tunes, so I do all the tracks, build all the tracks at home, and then say, here's the song. So I build it, I mix it a little bit. Here's the song. I'll send you the song with drums, and then I'll send you without drums, and then you record. Here's the time code, and you record drums. Send it back to myself. I send it to Howard. He mixes and masters it, and I send it to Paige. He puts it all together in a video, and I did a bunch of them. We did about 7, and then we got contracted to do one for the airport, and it was for Black History Month. And I write a lot of music that is pertaining to my history through the Underground Railroad, and then we did 7 songs for that and 7 different videos. 7 different videos. Yeah, it was cool, and it was played through the airport in 2021, probably in February of 2021. Yeah, it was, or maybe 2022. I can't remember. No, it wasn't this year. It was last year, I believe. Yeah, this now 2023, but it's just the beginning of it.
Well, tell me about the experience in Memphis. What was that like for you?
It was good. It was good. I write a lot of songs, like I just said. And so to me, it was very cool in the sense that I got down there to perform my original music, and then I added, and I did one show, and it went over really well. And then I said, well, and then I was with a couple friends of mine, and they said, let's spark it up a bit. So then I kicked in a song that I wrote with my brother called "Talk to Me." So I did that. It's kind of a funky thing. And when you're doing a blues gig, you don't want to get too funky, but I did anyways, and I'm doing a solo. So I did that, and I added "Talk to Me." But "Talk to Me" is a message about my family, where my family came from, through the Underground Railroad, and also a place called Montserrat, where my grandfather's from. So I put that in there, but it's the verses is like one part of the verse, and the second verse is the second part of the verse, but it's still the first verse goes in its entirety, and then the second part is just half of the first verse, so I need more vocals. So I added "Sister Rosa" by the Neville Brothers that we recorded as Blackburn, recorded years ago. So I added that, so that was the only thing that wasn't mine. So it went over really cool. I got to the semifinals. And you know what I mean? My style is different than most guitar players. So most of in the blues genre, I add a lot of chordal patterns. I play bass lines when I play. You know what I mean? Like if I'm doing a blues, I don't have a guitar with me right now. So when I do a blues, I'm doing like you can't really hear it. So I'm walking. So that's the way I do my blues, and that's kind of like a swing, So there wasn't too many players that played like that. So I did well. People dug it, and I think the musicians that came up to me afterwards, even the cat who won came up to me. Man, I really like it. I really dig what you do, and I was like, oh, thanks, man. But I hadn't seen his show. A cat from Australia, brother from Australia, and then I never saw a show. And then I said, no, man. I said, man, I heard about you. I said, you're from Australia. I said, yeah. I said, I heard. This talk on the street is all about you, man, and a lot of people were talking about me too, so which was kind of nice. So he just stopped me on the street after my performance, my semifinal performance, and he said hello. So just really beautiful people that I met, and real nice kind of thing. It was really nice. And again, I talk a lot about my family, and I talk a lot about Canadian history. So wherever I get the opportunity to tell my story, I will. And that was a venue that gave me the opportunity to tell my story.
Well, let's talk about that. So, because you've mentioned the Underground Railroad. Tell me a little bit about Elias Earl.
Elias was an enslaved person out of Kentucky, and he came up through the Underground Railroad, I believe, through like Maryland and through probably across Detroit, and then through the area of like Windsor, Buxton, Dresden, and came all the way through there, and then ended up north. So it came probably from the west. I'm not exactly sure of his journey, whether he crossed at Niagara or he crossed at Detroit. I'm not exactly sure, but it came up from Kentucky and then went north to a place called Owen Sound, which is south of there actually, or at least I don't know if he went all that way, but his kids did. So He might have ended up in Windsor, stayed in Windsor, and then his kid Solomon is my grandmother's father. Okay, Solomon, who settled north of Owen Sound. So I think they settled at the end. The most northern terminus of the Underground Railroad is Owen Sound, so I think he went all that way. I think Elias went all that way. And definitely his kids did, but I'm pretty sure, but his kids were born in Canada. I'm pretty sure they were. Yeah, they were born in Canada. So, but he was an enslaved person out of Kentucky that came up here probably in the mid 1800s. Obviously, Canada being emancipated in 1843, it was different than 1843, and then 1840. Oh, I don't quote me on that date. I just get my messed up a little bit because 1863 is when they're emancipated in the States. So I think it's 1843 where the British emancipated the blacks in in all the British colonies. But 1863. So for 30 years there, they basically made their way north as far as possible. You know what I mean, for freedom. So they made it up to Owen Sound, Ontario, just south of that, a place called Holland Center, which is around Chatsworth, if anybody knows that area.
And you have a humongous family, do you not?
Yeah. We just play. I got a really, really big family. We just played out in Windsor, Chatham, and St. Thomas this weekend. And every gig we had, I'm a cousin, I'm through this, I'm a Green, I'm a Earls, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a Johnson, I'm a Thompson, I'm this, So we got so many people in my family with all the different names and the heritage. Because, again, because of that area, basically, if you're coming up through Detroit, you hit Windsor. There was a black settlement there. You hit Dresden, there's a black settlement. You hit Chatham, there's a black settlement. All the way across there, that area, all the way basically across the 401 from basically Windsor all the way to Toronto and then north, were all Guelph and all those areas were all settlements, black settlements, through after the underground, during the Underground Railroad. So it's really that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. So I met a lot of my family, and then my Johnson's my regular family is we're playing yesterday in St. Thomas, and I hear these comments from the crowd. Man, that sounds like my cousin. That sounds like it's all my blood, So there's a lot of people in the crowd. So yeah, and then the family I have in Toronto is huge. And then like I play with my brothers and my cousins sometimes, and so we've got a big family. Yeah.
Okay, so where does the musical part come from? I know your dad was a serious musician, and
my father had been playing music in Toronto since 1955. He opened the original Blue Note on Yonge Street around late 50s. Played the Zanzibar Tavern forever, the Lecoq D'Or Tavern, Yonge Street, the down in the West End at the Cambridge Hotel, and all these different hotels he played forever. He toured Canada back and forth, up and down, all around from coast to coast to coast, forever and ever. And basically, he was quite the name. Matter of fact, when he was a kid, he did a recording of "You Are My Sunshine." I think it got noted as this new kid, really nice singer, and they wanted to take him down south. But at those times, we're talking about early 50s, it wasn't the best place for a black person to be down south. So my grandfather wouldn't allow it. Wouldn't allow my father to go down there. And he would have been one of the first people to play the Grand Ole Opry. They had scouted him to play the Grand Ole Opry. And I believe it's in Nashville. And his father wouldn't let him, because I think it was about 13 at that time.
Does the musical lineage start with him, or does it go?
Well, it starts with him directly in my family. But I mean, in my immediate family, but family, the Earls family, as in the name that came through the Underground Railroad was Earls, okay, EARLS, for myself, and then it sprouted into different names, Johnson's, Blackburn, this and that, throughout the generations, because my family name Blackburn comes from a place called Montserrat, which is by Antigua in the islands. I think it's the British island, or British Virgin Islands or something. But I've never been, and my grandfather, when he left there, he never went back. So yeah, so my father is there are people like Tommy Earls who had like an 18-piece big band before my father. It's a generation or two before my father. There was a lot of different players. It was when we have this emancipation picnic every year, and I went there, and they have this place in a place called Clarksburg, Ontario, which is by Georgian Bay, around that area. And there's some people there that are like, they gather the history. And I saw a photo of a musician that was probably in the 20s, or in our family, a prominent musician at the time. I didn't get his name, but he was a guitar player, singer. So there's a lot of musical lineage in my family. But you're talking about offshoots. In my immediate family with my father had been playing organ, basically B3 organ, since around 1955.
We should mention his last name, Bobby Dean Blackburn.
Bobby Dean Blackburn. He had a band in 1955 called Bobby Dean and the Gems.
I presume he must have been a huge influence on you becoming a musician.
Very much so, yeah. He's very, very influential on all of us. I mean, I was about 8 years old, maybe 6. My brother was either 8 or 10. And we came down Christmas morning, and there was a set of drums under the Christmas tree and a guitar. You know what I mean? So it was very much, always. And not only was it just the fact that instruments were laying around the house, but it was musicians used to come to our house all the time, because my parents owned a house, from being discouraged from renting because it was a black man and a white woman. You know what I mean? There were couples, and as soon as they saw the black man, my mother would have no problem getting an apartment. But as soon as they saw, she has a black husband, it was like, nah, sorry, we rented it already, or this, we're not renting it anymore. That kind of bull crap. So basically, they said, well, the easiest way is just to buy a house. So they moved out to Brampton and bought their first home probably in, I think I was born then, so we're talking about the late 60s, mid to late 60s. Probably, I was born in 63, so probably around 65, 66, they bought their first home. Or maybe even earlier than that. I think I was just about 1, so maybe 64, 65.
And so when you came down at Christmas time and you had the choice between guitar and drums, obviously you chose the guitar.
No, didn't have a choice. It said from Santa to Robert, from Santa, to Brooke. So I didn't have a choice. The choice wasn't that, from Santa, whatever Santa brings you, that's your thing. But I didn't play. I think we end up, my cousin Ricky was more the guitar player in the family. So I think he either got the guitar, or there was 2 guitars, bought one for him, one for me or something at that time. And he played more than I did. And I never really started playing until I was about 13. And then we had a friend of ours, my family, let's just say, was an open house to a lot of musicians that just came from the States through the Vietnam War, that needed a place to hang, you know what I mean, for a minute until they get their own place. So we were an open house to a lot of musicians. We had literal signs that said peace, love, and happiness in front of our house in Brampton, Ontario. Not only being a mixed family, you know what I mean, being, my grandparents were one of there was a few other black families, but one of the first to own a house in black families to own a house in Brampton, Ontario. So I never grew up in Brampton, but we lived there for about 4 or 5 years, 6 years, maybe around then I moved to Mississauga, and I grew up in Mississauga. But it was interesting to, be a product of, hippie-ish musicians back then, ish, ISH. But growing up in that world, and then growing up, with musicians that come to the house all the time. So when you have your own house, obviously you're gonna have a basement. When you have a basement, you have rehearsals. So my parents would come, cats that played with Alvin Jones would come over, Dougie Richardson, and all these cats would come over and play some songs, and you're there as a kid, just like taking in all this information. And you start saying that maybe, I remember this cat named Roland Prince came over, and he taught me this song called Softly as a Morning Song. There's a couple of musicians that played with my dad. Terry Logan, guitar players wise. Terry Logan, Roland Prince, and Rollie Simmons. And these cats play with my dad, and I got a little bit of something from everyone, you know. So you just get influenced by all these musicians that drop around the house, and then David Clayton Thomas would come over, and everybody would come over back then. You know, it was very cool.
Do you remember when you thought this is something you wanted to do?
Yeah, there was a cat named Eugene Evans, or Gene Evans, came over and played with my dad. Okay, and he came over and he played the guitar, and he was really influenced by a lot of the jazz, but crossover jazz players like Benson, you know what I mean, and certain players that were really doing like modern R&B, but with a jazz feel. And I really liked that. And I said, man, and they were playing, I think they were playing the Cambridge. So it was like, these guys are playing 6 nights a week, doing a hotel gig. You know what I mean? I'm about 14 or 15 at that time. And I said, well, this is what I want to do for my career, because I want to really deep and realize that they can be a really good player, a very cool, very good player playing these hotels. And just like, one thing about playing a hotel is that's like your aspirations in life is to play hotels. But you can get enough money so that you can record. You can get enough money so that you can tour. You can get enough money. You can work at home and build a house, and you know what I mean, and have a family or whatever, and do these gigs in your city, because Toronto, was a very fast growing city at that time. And it was like, okay, I could probably do this as my living. And, I wasn't the best in school. When I applied myself, I was much better. But at times, you know what I mean, school was what it was. So it's like, okay, I can dig this, man. I can see myself, pursuing a musical career. And this was even before I started songwriting. But, I saw it. I could see from the people that came over, I just really dug this cat's playing. I really was into Benson too. And then Gary came and stayed at our place, and he was into Benson, and he was taught by the guitar player, Phil Upchurch, that was the rhythm guitar player for George Benson. He was from Chicago. Which I found out later that he was actually, he is the nephew of Hubert Sumlin. So it's like, you got all this who played with Howlin' Wolf. So you've got all this heritage of people but we were into George Benson at that time. We weren't into the blues. It was like learn Affirmation, learn Breezin', learn that Breezin' album. You know what I mean? Really, that would really change my world. That album, Breezin'. So it was like, okay, But then I realized later on, after hooking up with this cat, like about 30 years later, I was doing a gig in Calgary with Shakura, and this guy's in the audience, and we're doing a sound check. And we're doing this recording for CBC, and the sound check, and I'm playing blues, but I'm doing, like I said earlier, how I put these jazz chords, or and influence the way I play. Everything that I learned, I apply to my playing. So he said, "Man, I really like your changes, man." Just the guy in the audience, couldn't even see him. It was dark, because we had the lights on doing this thing for CBC, and it's like, okay. I said, "Oh, cool, man. Thanks, man." And then because we just had taken a break, and then he said, "I used to play with your old man." I said, "What?" "Okay, all right." And he said, "My name's Gary." I said, Gary? Not Gary. He said, "Yeah." And I hadn't seen this cat for 30 years, man. And he had taught me how to play a lot of the George Benson stuff. You know what I mean? The Breezin' and Affirmation, and like I say, from that album. And it was just so cool, man. And then he told me about his blues heritage. And I didn't realize, I knew it was from Chicago, but at that time, I never really put 2 and 2 together, how he could have been connected with, like, all these people. Like when you're connected with Hubert Sumlin, who played with Howlin' Wolf, that means you're connected with everybody else, from the Chess Records world, and all the people like that toured, so around that time, through the Muddy Waters and so on, so and so.
That's Gary Martin, is that correct?
Yeah, Gary Martin, yeah.
Wasn't he part of Motown, or?
Yeah, he did. He was one of the Funk Brothers later on. He went out to Detroit, and he's been doing the Funk Brothers thing for a while. Yeah.
I'm curious as to what your dad might have thought about you becoming a musician. Was he very encouraging? Or
he was very encouraging, very encouraging. But I mean, I'm sure he had aspirations of his kids getting as much education as possible. You know what I mean? As my mother did. So I, or does, or she's, you know, the grandchildren are very educated. So at that time, you know, music was so prominent in our life. And like myself and my brother on Boxing Day would take whatever money that we got from Christmas and go down to Sam the Record Man and wait in line, you know, on Boxing Day morning just to get the sales. You know, get a record for $5 or $3 or $2. You know what I mean? Like a Junior Walker record or a George Benson record or a funk record. You know, like Rick James or whoever at that time. You know, the Bar-Kays and SOS and Parliament, P-Funk, all that stuff. We stand in line and line and line and line, and we get there about 6 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? Taking the bus from Mississauga, you know, out there when we were, I mean, not kids, but, you know, teenagers or what, not teenagers, well, young, around 14, 15. My brother was probably 16, 17. And we do it. So the influence of music was strong and still is. I mean, there's 4 boys in the family and we all play. So, you know, it's definitely strong. So, I mean, that kind of motivation when you're younger, you know, and then if you are interested, I mean, we're never forced to play instruments, of course, but if you are interested, it's like, well, if you're going to be interested in this, you got to learn this instrument. That means you got to practice. You know what I mean? So I'd wake up in the morning, practice before I went to school, come back at lunch, practice a little bit, try to remember what I practiced in the morning, go to school, come back after school, practice what I try to remember from the morning to the afternoon to the after that, learn some more from basically 5 o'clock until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock that night. Try to keep as much memory as I can. Wake up in the morning and do the same cycle again. You know what I mean? So music was there, and then I took music in high school too. You know.
So I heard that, you know, you went out and started playing with other people like Eugene Smith and various other people. But at one point, you were kind of waiting for Corey, your youngest brother, to learn the drums.
Yeah, let's preface that a little bit. I started, before Eugene, I played in a band called 20th Century Rebels, a reggae band from the 70s. Okay, so I was about, let's see, I was born in 63, so 73, so around 78, 79, I was about 14, 15, and I started playing. And in my neighborhood, there was a couple guitar players, really good guitar players, but, you know, I was really into Bob Marley at that time, too. That's another record guy, you know, another recording artist that I'd wait to line up to buy his record. So I was into Marley, Peter Tosh, you know, Third World and all that stuff, and Truth and Rights was a Canadian band, but a bunch of bands back in the day, reggae. So I ended up playing in my neighborhood. There was a very strong influence of West Indian culture. So we basically, with my cousin, they started this band, asked me if I wanted to play. So I played reggae for about 3 years before I started playing R&B. I was playing with my father since I was 15. So in the interim of playing with the reggae band, I was doing playing with my father, and I probably would have stayed in reggae if there was any money in it, but there wasn't any money in it. So I kind of somebody just called me who actually I play with right now, but. Yeah, it was just like, you know, and I just realized that R&B, jazz, blues, you know, there was more of a future. I could do that in a club, but I loved reggae, man. I loved reggae. I love playing reggae. There's nothing like that sound of the pumping bass and the kick drum making your heart, you know, feeling it in your body. I loved reggae, and the stories and you know, the struggles that reggae music is, like, you know, the West Indian blues in a sense, you know what I mean? It came from the struggles of black people, so it's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy. I loved reggae, and then I got into R&B in the '80s and played the Blue Note, the Network, PWDs, Downtown Browns, to Chickendale. Played all these clubs in the '80s to the '90s, and the '90s to the 2000s. And then we really started, and then my brother, like you just mentioned, my baby brother was old enough. So as soon as he started playing with my father too. And he used to play downtown at Nolan's Jazz Bar, which I ended up playing for about 10 years after that, or 12 years. Anyways, so when that first place came to existence, my brother was about 15, and my father played there. He was the first musician there. He was played there for like 3 or 4 years straight. And every Saturday and Sunday, he'd have my brother in the corner playing drums with him. You know what I mean? And that Corey was about 13, and then 14, then 15. Then we did a gig called Allison's Restaurant out in Streetsville, Mississauga. And my brother was old enough. And then we started playing there every weekend, which my father was there before us too. So my father really was a groundbreaker, you know what I mean, to trailblazer for us to do what we do. And then we started playing there, and then we built a recording studio. And from that, at my mother's house, the 3-car garage, we built a recording studio and recorded our first album. That and a friend of ours in Mississauga and Malton, a guy named John, helped us out because we recorded some stuff at his place. So between building our own studio and working with John, it was kind of, from there. And then we recorded our next album there too at the studio.
So with all your background of reggae, R&B, soul, when did you get into the blues? Where does that come in?
Well, you see, you know, being a R&B or musician that plays black music, period, you're always in the blues. You know, you're always playing blues. You know what I mean? And if you just break it down and realize that you know, whether you're playing, you know, whatever you're playing, you know, R&B from the Motown era, you're playing different stuff from. If you play music from all these different eras, then you realize that the basis of it is blues. So I started playing with Shakura Saida, okay? Shakura, very, very, one of my closest friends, she asked me, she said, Brooke, man, you want to come and play some gigs with me, some blues gigs? I'm like, sure, you know. I mean, I played, you know, a lot of I was playing, the type of blues that I played at that time was like, again, that type of swing blues in the sense of, Jimmy Smith, Jimmy McGriff, Richard Groove Holmes, organ players, because my father's a B3 organ player. That's why I play with bass lines. You know, that's why when I'm playing a blues, whether it be that kind of blues, I'm always thinking like an organ player. My guitar's a little bit out of tune. You know, so I'm playing bass lines all the time. And when you play with an organ player, anybody who plays with an organ player, whether they're doing a gig with a bass player or not, it doesn't matter, because that organ player is not going to let go of his left hand. He's gonna be playing those bass lines, so they're locked in your brain. You know what I mean? So to me, it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to play like that, you know. So I started playing the blues like that, and then I indoctrinated like the stuff that I learned through the jazz in this thing, because I'm not a token jazz player. I'm a musician, you know. I play different things. I'm more of a soul-based player, but I would bring in those type of influences of playing, and then I really started diving deep into blues, and then I started writing music. When you write music, you know what I mean, you start from, to me, I'm starting from a foundation of my family. So, you know, my father always, you know, playing Chicken Shack and playing these different blues classics, was like, okay, I'm going to write in this vein. I'm going to write with a little bit of a funky tilt to it, but it's still going to be in this vein. And if I'm going to play a singer-songwriter song, you know what I mean, it's going to be kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to just play a straight C major. I'll play a C7th, or I'll play a C13th. And then it's like, you know, if I'm going to write that way, I'm going to write with these bluesy-ish type of chords, you know, right? And so to me, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to start writing. And then the more I started writing, and the more influence that I got playing with Shakura, I'm playing with different players that she played with in the blues vein. It's like, okay, I can do this. I can write these tunes in this vein, but they're still soul-based blues. You know, it's blues, but it's soul-based blues. So it's like, it's still the blues, but it's stretching it out a little bit, like learning a learning a straight blues was not my intention concept, but it's like I want to add the 2, 3, flat 3, or the 6, 2, 5, 1, which you learn from jazz, and then you learn these different. Add the flat 3 or the 3, 4, sharp 4, 5, sharp 5, 6, 2, 5, 3, 2, 3, flat 3, 2, sharp 1, 1. And then so it's just that's kind of adding soul. Like Stormy Monday Blues by T-Bone Walker is a soul song. Is an R&B. They called that an R&B song. It was a blues song, but it indoctrinated these other chord changes. And that's kind of where I like Stormy Monday Blues is pretty well the first blues next to Chicken Shack that I ever learned. But Stormy Monday Blues, if you listen to it, it's got these more chords in it. So it's not it's not like a standard blues from the Chicago days. You know what I mean? It's more of a just a little bit more intense. And I like chords. I love chordal patterns and chordal thoughts and chordal harmony, you know. So, and I've got 6 strings, so I'm going to use them, you know, and in that concept.
When you first got Blackburn, the band, together.
Yeah, when my brother was old enough. My baby brother was old enough, yeah.
But what would happen if he couldn't play very well?
Well,
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, he's got my brother next to me to tell him how to play, to teach him how to play. We all taught each other, you know. And with my father,
but,
yeah, you know, it's an interesting question. You just play, man. You don't really play well or worse than it. You just play, and the more you play, you get better at it. The more you practice, you get better. It doesn't matter who you are. You know, it doesn't matter if your genetic background is you know that your father's a musician. You just practice, and I think the more you get influenced by seeing your brothers play, the more you want to play with them. So you practice more and more and more. You know,
he's a hell of a drummer.
He's to me the baddest drummer that there is. I mean, baddest good.
When you guys got together in the very beginning,
yeah.
Did you know what that sound was going to be? I know, you know, you had obviously background in playing lots of different kind of music. I presume Robert and Dwayne did as well. But
yeah.
How long did it take for you to realize what the Blackburn sound was going to be?
Basically, when Corey got old enough, and when Corey started playing with us and we started writing together, that's when we really developed the Blackburn sound. And when you have a house gig, it helps, whether it be Joe Mama's Downtown, Nolan's Jazz Bar, or Allison's Restaurant back in the 80s or 90s, I guess the 90s, because Corey was 76, 86, I guess 90s, yeah, in the mid 90s we were playing Allison's. Yeah, it was in the mid 80s, early 90s, but it was like that sound started coming together with a real groove based thing. And when I say groove, people understand that I mean like a solid groove underneath the song. Like it's about the song, it's about the groove, it's about the song. Let's take a song and build a strong foundation so that the song can be lyrical, the song can have rhythm, the song can grow in that capacity. But it's got to have a strong bass. And we have a player like my brother Corey, or a player like Mark A, i.e. the bass player that was originally with Blackburn. You have this foundation that is so strong and so full, and then you take that and you start playing the clubs, and everybody notices what's with this band Blackburn. They could be playing covers, they could be playing whatever. This is before we were Blackburn, but this band has this roots. It's almost like the root foundation and the roots of the music is so prevalent because we play reggae, because we play funk, because we play blues, because we play jazz. You know what I mean? We have that kind of foundation, but it's everything we play, we try to be groovy before we do anything else. And that means playing together. You understand? Playing music together and forming a unit together so that every time you play, all you're doing is accentuating the foundation. And if you don't do that, you can be the greatest songwriter in the world, you can be the greatest singer in the world, you can be the greatest bass player, or whatever the situation. If you're not together, it's like the Chicago Bulls. You know, any of these teams in basketball or hockey or whatever that ever became great. They weren't great just because of Michael Jordan. They're great because they were coached well. That means that you have a foundation. If you play together, If you're playing a team sport, music is like that. And more you play together and listen to everybody, and you have to learn how to listen. I was taught how to listen. I never listened until I was taught how to listen. And then you start hearing, okay, well, you're not just playing your own music. You're not having your head stuck to your own amplifier. You're listening to the whole total essence of what you're doing on stage. And that's where Blackburn concentrates on, you know. So that Blackburn sound came from when my two baby brothers, my two younger brothers, were old enough to basically do their thing.
And is it an easy thing to know where the band is going? Like you have at least four different people, individuals. And I'm just thinking in terms of my dysfunctional family who are not very close and we're not musically talented in any way. But if I was to play in a band with two of my brothers, I don't know what that would be like. What is the dynamic like with playing with your brothers?
The dynamic of playing with my brothers is there. I guess there could be an inherent cohesiveness because we are blood related, probably vocally wise, definitely. What happens when you play with your brothers, when you write a song, because you all grew up listening to the same music on the same record player, you know, for 20 some odd years or whatever, or 15 or whatever, many years until we all moved out. Because of the influences of the music, you can all relate. So when I bring something to the table, whether I bring it or whether Dwayne brings it or Corey brings it or Robert brings it, you know what I mean? There's always that kind of cohesive. Basically, we're talking about me, Robert, myself, Corey, and Dwayne playing live, performing live. So when we're bringing something to the live table in order for it to be represented live, then the influences that I've had, if I come as a songwriter, they're all going to understand, and they can even pinpoint where the groove came from, you know, conceptually, like, because everything is borrowed, begged, and stole in a sense. Everything is I learned from somebody else, so I learned from listening, whether it be my father, whether it be Gary, whether it be George Benson, whether it be Richard Groove Holmes, whether it be Jimmy Smith, whether it be whomever on guitar. You know, you learn all these things, and then you bring it together and you form your own path, a musical path. And because of that, when I write a song, it's basically a path of my journey. You know, I don't write a song where I just learned this chord, so I'm going to write a song. It's basically what I've learned through that concession. And then I apply my personality, and then I apply my experiences vocally and lyrically. So it's very much in that concept that they're going to understand. You understand? They're going to understand the groove before I bring it to the table. And if I didn't, then I wouldn't bring it to the table. You know what I mean? Because if it's something that I think might be too folkish or might be too whatever Latinish or whatever the situation may be, because the Latin influence in Canada is huge, you know, from the Cuban side and so many different, you know, Peru and all the beautiful music that has came to Canada throughout the years. So then I keep it for another band that I have called the Bentley Collective, and that's more of a singer-songwriter acoustic guitar kind of groove, you know, and that's what I do in that band. And so I, you know, being a writer, you just keep on writing, and I just know what's going to work with Blackburn. I feel it's going to work with Blackburn. If it doesn't, if I think I got a good song that I wrote in the singer-songwriter context, I'm going to bring it to Blackburn and let it do what it do. You know what I mean? And grow and say they know it's a good song. But it's going to develop its own flavor when Corey starts playing the groove, when Dwayne, who plays like Dwayne, you know, like no other, plays his stuff, when we bring in Andrew Stewart on bass or whomever the situation may be. For the new album was my cousin Nathan did a lot on bass, but when Andrew's playing live and Corey and together this rhythm section, and I bring a couple chords and a lyric and a melody, and Dwayne does his thing, then you're going to grow. And then you got the horns on top of that, Neil and Ted doing what they do. You know what I mean? So you've got this cohesiveness of everything that they hear from their musical knowledge throughout the years. So I try to bring stuff that's going to work with the family, you know?
How does the writing happen? Does it, like, you talked about all the different kind of things that you wrote during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Does writing come to you in terms of, I need to write an album, I need to write material for the next Blackburn album? Or
No.
does it just come to you and you say, this is a Blackburn song,
Yeah.
this is a jazz song, this is Bentley Collective?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it works. I just write, I get an idea, whether I'm sitting on the couch playing guitar whether I got a lyric, whether I got a bass line, because I started playing bass during the pandemic. And I bought a bass. And so when I'm recording with getting a drum loop from wherever, and then recording real bass, real piano. Started playing way more piano than we all grew up playing piano, but because my father's a piano player, so I might get the idea on piano. 3 o'clock in the morning, I started playing these chords, these descending chords on piano, and it's just like, oh man, this is so cool. It's very, very cool, these chords. And then I pressed record, and I was just playing these piano changes. I pressed record, and I sent an Instagram live thing or something, or just, less than 60 seconds, and I did it. So I played this pattern, and then a buddy of mine, Michael Shan, who's a great piano player, gave me a call or texted me, said, man, I really dig what you did, man. Let's do something with that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I started writing more to that just from the piano, and I wrote a song called Good Morning, and then he helped. He took it to him. I sent it to him. Him being a beautiful piano player, rearranged it and add these beautiful touches, and cohesively we did a tune, and it's a song that I have out on my YouTube channel called Good Morning. And then I sent it to Howard, and I sent it to Ben Riley, and then I sent it to Michael and myself, and I can't remember if I had another guitar player on that or not. And then we did a multi-screen video, over thing. And Good Morning talks about the day we're going to wake up and the pandemic will be over. But let's remember how together we were during the pandemic, how the animals would come closer to the city now because we're not driving as much, because we're not doing this, we're not doing that. So all these ideas of the consciousness of what I grew up being a spiritual, growing up in a very spiritual kind of nature-loving family was prevalent in my writing. And then I wrote the song called Good Morning. And it's not about, good morning, how are you? It's about good morning. Now let's learn what we've just done for the last 2 years. Let's be more conscious of our neighbor. Let's be more conscious of the environment, because the ozone layer almost started repairing itself, or started repairing itself in the 2 years that we were not bringing out so many fossil fuels into the air, so much carbon. I'm not an advocate for that, but I'll write what I can, and that's the way my music writes. And then I got an idea on guitar a couple days ago, and then I said, man, I started doing it in sound check, just these cool chords, and I said, man, it was in sound check yesterday or a day before, and as soon as I started playing it, I looked at the bass player, Andrew, and I said, this was one we got to work on, because I love these chords. I love the pattern of these chords. And then I said, Andrew, because I know the way he plays, and I said, man, this is something that we could cohesively work on. And being a musicians are a family of his own. I come from a family of musicians, but musicians in Toronto, we're a little family on top of that. So, if I hear something that I know from different cats playing that I write, I say, I got to introduce it to this brother and see what he can do with it, or sister, see what they can do with it. So that's what I've done for years. Either just write it from get-go, from the first note to the last note, and then bring it to people and give them and let them play the way they interpret it, or write an idea and say, man, check it. Well, I usually end up writing everything anyways. I say I'm gonna hook up with, but hooking up with friends is difficult. You know what I mean? So I end up saying, well, I don't want to sit around here and watch TV. I'm going to finish the song and then let them take it from there. So, but I'm gonna definitely do this one with Andrew. So hopefully, but it's a cool groove. So you got these grooves, you got these concepts, and it's like, I don't know. But writing is fun. It's fun, and it keeps me from sitting down on Netflix and eating everything in my house.
Well, speaking of writing, Blackburn has a new album coming out.
Yes,
I'm not sure if there's a release date, but it's this year, right? And we've been waiting for this.
Yes. Thanks, Marco.
We've had some conversations about this over the years.
Yeah. Well, you've always been there, man. You've always been there. You've always been there. When the next album comes out, you're always usually there, either doing photography or interviewing or doing whatever. You know what I mean? Doing the videography or whatever. You're always there, man. It's always so nice to have you in our corner.
And you know how much I feel about the band. Tell me about the new album.
The new album coming out is again a collaboration of writing between myself and my brothers, mainly my older brother Robert and myself and Dwayne and Corey, and my cousin Nathan is playing a lot of bass on it, and we've got Howard on a few tracks, and I think Andrew might be on a few tracks, and I'm not exactly sure everybody that's on the record, but we've got the horns on it, more horn friendly, and Ted and Neil. Ted Peters and Neil Brathwaite, and yeah, it's really nice. It's really the sound of what we've been doing now. You know, there's no time to add like all that color. It's just the groove. You know what I mean on the track. So they're they sound a lot like what we do live, and that's just a groove based, good good songs, good writing. I feel anyways. And good stories, and we have a song called Freedom Train, talks about the Underground Railroad and stuff like that, which was not a literal train. It was, different people that are helping you out, although we come from the south to north, different safe houses in different areas and different paths to go, but they call it Underground Railroad. And Freedom Train's on there, a bunch of songs. I wrote a song called Soul Brother, so it talks about the 60s of, brothers from that day in the black community where such revered, beautiful people because they'd work hard and they'd still be so cool in downtown. And I got a line about platform shoes or high heel shoes, you know what I mean? Because you have those movies from back in the day that's called it blaxploitation movies, but they were very hip because you see another person like you on television, so you know what I mean. I was always into that. Then you had the conscious movies of like Sidney Poitier, like Raisin in the Sun and Lilies of the Field, and you had that kind of concept too. So just the Soul Brother that I grew up listening to, and the peace sign of the things we had in the house. So I wrote a little bit about the stuff. I always write about the 60s and the 70s. So I was born in '63, so. I like to, I don't really reminisce that much because I was very young, but I remember the hippie days in the sense of all the people used to come over and how cool they were dressed and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's good. It's gonna be a really cool album, man. It's a really cool album. And of course, it's through Electrify again, through Andrew Galloway. So we're very happy and very fortunate that he told us, before that he'd put out another album. Yet it took us 7 years to make. But he put out our previous album, Brothers in This World, and he's very, very patient with us. And I just saw him at the awards. He looks great, looks really healthy, and it's really nice to see him. And so it was really, it's a good album. I think it's gonna really open a lot of doors, man. This album, we're hoping, and hopefully get more talk around the world about it.
So I'm curious. You know how much I love your live performances.
Nice.
Did you ever think about doing a live album?
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot myself. I've thought about it's funny because being back into the scene after 2 years of not playing, we just played 3 days, Windsor, Chatham, and St. Thomas, Ontario, where Jumbo the Elephant unfortunately met his demise. Or her demise. I'm not sure it was a female or male, but yes, we played. Now, if I have another strip of 3 nights, I would really like to record those and be conscious of it. Okay, we're going to do 3 nights in Canada or the States or wherever, or Europe, and we're gonna try to get those recorded each night. And just do those 3 nights and get the best out of it, and then record. I would love to press a live album because that's who we are. We are live musicians. We are live street. We're off the street. We got that raw sound. We are funky. We're groovy. We are street music. We're like not street as in buskers. I mean street as in the clubs. We're from that club era. We're playing live since we could remember, since we started playing music. So that's what our goals and aspirations were, to play live. So when you press record, it's unfortunately we're live musicians, so we get that essence coming out in our recordings, but actually having an audience in front of you and digging what we do, hopefully, then I would love to do a live album. Malcolm, man, I'd love it. I love it. You just got to make sure of certain things, the sound is right and the recording is right and the levels are right. And you got to really be conscious of that when you're doing a live show. So it's probably not the easiest way, because either that or you stick to one venue and then you record 3 nights in that one venue. So say you're doing either a 4-day gig, or you do your first gig and then you get the levels, you know what I mean? And then maybe record on the second or third night, and then hopefully the band is grooving and everything's good and the arrangements are tight, and yeah, that would be nice, because we have, we've recorded, this is our 5th album, Mako. It's our 5th recording, you know what I mean? I've recorded my own album in the interim called Bentley Collective Songs, but this is our 5th Blackburn. Our first one was Soul Searching. Second one was Living. Brotherhood was the third one through Lance. Recorded it through Make It Real Records. And the fourth one was Brothers in This World through Electrify Records. And this is our 5th band recording. So we've got a lot of songs to choose from to do a live record.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope it happens. But I'm looking forward to hearing the new album. I think I've heard some of it.
Yeah, you probably have, yeah.
And when is it coming out? Do you know?
Nope.
But soon.
Hopefully by the summer. I assume it'll be out in the spring. I'm assuming it'll be out in the spring. So I would say late February. Like, it's pretty well almost done. I know all the music is done, and the mastering I think is pretty well done. But, with the world being the way it is, it takes time to get anything pressed. Like, we were talking about getting some albums pressed yesterday, and I think there's a 6-month delay already to actually do physical recordings. So I think that we will end up possibly having it out by March. I'm really pushing. We're pushing for that, either early March or mid March. And as far as, I'm a live player, so I'd love to do a CD release party. Whether we do or not, I don't know. I'm only, one, out of my brothers, I only have my voice about that. So we'll see. We'll see. I'd love to play the record live and do that again, but we'll see what happens. But it's a really cool album, man. It's very cool. Very cool album. My brother's a really good writer too, Robert, and Dwayne's got his influences. Corey's got their influences in it. So a lot of writing, a lot of complete collaborative from Dwayne and Corey and Robert and myself. Music, as far as writing, and then of course collaboration between the producers and the other musicians that played on it. So it's a good record, man. It's gonna be a good record. I hope. I hope people dig it. I hope people dig it.
I'm sure they will. Brooke, thank you so much for taking this time. I always enjoy talking to you, and I love seeing you guys play live. And
thanks, man.
Thank you for sharing that.
Blackburn Brothers are performing February 18th at a place called Bush Home in Erin, Ontario. Bush Home is a really cool club right on the main strip in Erin, Ontario. So just basically north of Brampton, just west of, what's the name of that town? Caledon. And it's probably the Caledon district. February 18th at the Bush Home in Erin, Ontario. Yes, just north of Brampton, west of Caledon. February 18th, 8 o'clock p.m. February 2023. February 18th, 2023. That's our next Blackburn game.
And if they want to have more information, they can go to your website, which is
BlackburnBrothersMusic.com. BlackburnBrothersMusic.com, or my personal thing if they want to check me out, TheBentleyCollective.com. The Bentley, BENTLEY Collective.com. And you can check me on Instagram at The Bentley Collective. And or you can just say hi when you see me on the street.
Great. Brooke, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, and I also do one more thing, my brother Mako.
Sure.
I do the CIUT Calling All Blues. I do a radio show. I'm one of the hosts of the Calling All Blues, and I do that like once a month. There's four, every Saturday in the afternoon from 12 to 1, and I do one a month. So, and I do it right from my house, my studio here. So, kind of cool.
What radio station is that?
CIUT,
That's UT, right?
CIUT 89.5 on your FM dial. University of Toronto Radio. Calling All Blues. Calling All Blues.
Spoken like a DJ. Brooke, thank you so much
It's all
for
good,
doing
Mako.
this.
Thank you, man. I really dig it. Thank you.